Look, I ain't in this for your revolution, and I'm not in it for you, Princess. I expect to be well paid. I'm in it for the money.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. This week, we're going to be talking about the York Revolution, an Atlantic League of Professional Baseball team that plays in York, Pennsylvania. Later on in this episode, I'll be speaking with Central Pennsylvania's Phil Broder, longtime listener and Baseball by Design's minor league hockey correspondent. Also, Dan Simon will be here with one of his Studio Simon Stumpers. Right now, I am so pleased to have on Baseball by Design Eric Menser, who is the president and general manager for the York Revolution and who was instrumental in the team even existing. Eric, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you this morning?
Well, I'm doing very well this morning. Very excited to talk about another Pennsylvania team, my native Pennsylvania. So I'm always glad to feature a Pennsylvania team on the podcast. Before we get into the meaning of revolution to the town of York, Pennsylvania, you have been with the team since its inception, and in fact were involved with conjuring the team into existence before its inception. So, if you don't mind, let's go way back to the late '90s, early 2000s, and
Yeah.
the team was founded in 2006. What was your role in bringing the team to creation?
Well, I was the economic development director for the city of York from 1994 until 2001. And I tell people that I think I was the first person to whom the mayor at the time said, we ought to bring minor league baseball back to York. And I had the good sense at the time not to say, what are you crazy? And the rest is literally history. Now, I'm a huge baseball fan myself personally, but also was convinced pretty early on that a ballpark in our downtown could anchor some significant redevelopment efforts and could be a great quality of life amenity for our entire county. And turns out we were right. Took a long time to bring the rest of the community along with us and to navigate the world was a different set of complications in the minor league baseball world at the time with territorial restrictions. The Harrisburg Senators are within 35 miles of where I'm sitting right now. So we were blocked for years from having an affiliated team. But fortunately, the Atlantic League, as a so-called independent, now partner league with Major League Baseball, provided a great alternative, which eventually came to fruition. So I was involved all along. Even when I left the city, the construction company that I worked for ended up getting the construction management contract to build the ballpark, and I was the project executive on that. Now, I do have to make a slight correction, which is I was not the first president and general manager, but I was the season ticket holder, and I was here on opening day, June 15th, 2007. I came over to the team in 2010, so I've been here for 15 years. But as you said, involved with trying to bring the team to fruition, bringing it to fruition, being in the seats on opening day, being a season ticket holder, and now being an employee. And not only that, but my wife is our finance director, so it's truly a family business.
I said earlier that the team was founded in 2006, but as you say, the first season was
Correct.
2007. So,
Correct. It was founded in 2006, and yeah, played our first game in 2007.
so being in the city, being around the team, being instrumental in the fact that it exists, surely you have some insight into how come a team in York, Pennsylvania, is going to be called the York Revolution. What does that team name mean?
Well, it actually means a couple of things, and so if you'll indulge me, I'll tell you the story. So back in the day when York had a minor league baseball team, it was the York White Roses or the York Pirates. The White Rose is the symbol of the city of York, England, and then became the symbol. And we are known as the White Rose City. There's the White Rose Restaurant and White Rose this and White Rose that all over York. So then for a period of time, we were a Pittsburgh Pirates affiliate for a short period of time, and the team was renamed the York Pirates. But York had not had a minor league baseball team for a number of years. And so the founders did the typical thing and held an in the team contest, which, as is also typical, of course, draws all kinds of smart aleck entries, but also a lot of serious ones as well. And there was a lot of sentiment that the team should be the York White Roses again. I think, however, there was also a recognition that in the modern era of minor league baseball, the team name needs to be something that you can use for marketing purposes and so on and so forth. And so the York Revolution was one of the finalists. And at that time, which would have been 2006, 2007, there was a lot of emphasis in York on our Revolutionary War history. Most people may not know that York actually served as the capital of the United States for 9 months. So during the Revolutionary War, the Continental Congress was meeting in Philadelphia, and the British were breathing down their neck. And so they looked around and said, how can we put a river between us and the Brits? Well, the Susquehanna River, which is about 15 miles to our east here in York, was that river. So the Continental Congress relocated to York and was here for 9 months. It was while they were here that they adopted the Articles of Confederation, which town boosters claim was the country's first constitution, and that therefore York was the first capital of the United States. And so if you're hosting the Continental Congress, all of the luminaries were here at one time or another. George Washington, and as the general, and all of the famous signers of the Declaration spent some time coming and going in York. There are actually some interesting historical records of their view on this hick town that they were forced to go to keep the British out. In any event, when the Name the Team contest was being held, there was a lot of focus in York at the time on our Revolutionary War history. And so York Revolution, quote unquote, won the contest. Now, I have to say, I don't have access to the actual official tabulation, and I don't know whether anyone put their thumb on the scale of the Name the Team contest, but Revolution it was. And our early logo and imagery reflected that idea. It reflected a red, white, and blue color scheme, an eagle, and really was focused on York's Revolutionary War history. I'll pause for a moment to take a breath and tell you, however, that that's not the end of the story.
Okay. Well, that's good because I impulsively, when you say eagle, I have to say go birds. And so
Yeah.
but yeah, the two very distinct brands separated around 2011 to 2012. Oh, the other thing I was going to say was I am, as many people I think in minor league baseball are, and seems like maybe you are a little bit too, deeply suspicious of the whole notion of the name to team
Yeah.
contest.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't give away too many trade secrets, but presumably people listening to us know a little something, might have some insight into how that process works.
So you were with the team though at the end of that 2011 season, and then going
Correct.
into 2012, and so the
Yes.
the decision was made to rebrand. As you say, there's a sort of different sense of the word
Yeah.
revolution. What went into that decision? And
Yeah.
I sort of jokingly said "Go Birds," but the head on that eagle in the first brand looks
Yes.
very similar to that
Suspiciously.
suspiciously like that Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, and to be clear for the listeners, you're talking to a guy that, even though I've lived in York, Pennsylvania, one might argue in the shadow of Philadelphia for almost 38 years now, I grew up in Washington, D.C. as an arch rival in the NFC East. I could never. So I'll put it this way. I'll say that for a guy who grew up in Washington, D.C., running a company with a logo that looks suspiciously like a Philadelphia Eagle was maybe a slight burr under the cell. But here's the fuller story
Yeah.
of that so-called rebranding. Now your listeners will pick up the fact that we're still called the York Revolution.
Hmm.
Didn't want to change. Changing the name of a 3 or 4 year old team would be a step too far.
Hmm.
But it was my sense when I came on board in 2010, 2011, that maybe we had, as they say these days, leaned a little too heavily on the Revolutionary War imagery, because even though that Continental Congress did meet here in York for 9 months, it's very legitimate, very significant historically. The character of York is not as a colonial town. We are not a quaint New England village with split rail fences and muskets and monuments. York really grew, and the character of our community is more about industry and manufacturing and the industrial revolution.
Hmm.
And so it's a different revolution. And when I came on board at the time, there was really a lot of focus in the community on saying, we still are a manufacturing town. I mean, to this day, the only place in the world where they make a Harley Davidson soup to nuts is right here in York, Pennsylvania. So the manufacturing, the York Barbell, Harley Davidson, any number of other well-known manufacturers, York International, the big HVAC company, that the character of York, the red brick buildings, the work ethic, was really more indicative of the Industrial Revolution and the industrial character of York. So that was the first thing that was kind of going on. The second thing is, I think we recognized, look, it's minor league baseball and it's supposed to be fun, right? You need lovable, fun, maybe lighthearted. Now, in my opinion, there's teams that have gone so off the deep end of being lighthearted, it's almost become a one-upsmanship about how goofy you can be at this point. And look, I'm all about selling T-shirts, so if I come up with something, I'm not going to shy away from it. But we wanted something that was a little softer and a little more fun, and then invoked a different kind of history. We also had recognized that the red, white, and blue palette color scheme of our team, there were two or three other teams in the league doing the same thing, and so you'd put teams out there in red, white, and blue jerseys against each other. So we did hire a firm to help us pick up in our imagery and in our logo those industrial themes. We softened the what I used to call the Screaming Eagle mascot. Still an identity of an eagle. We're
Mhm.
still, we're still all about celebrating our history and our heritage as a great American manufacturing city. But definitely now our logo reflects more of that manufacturing image. The O's in our revolution are screw heads. There's a tailpipe in our logo with a flame coming out, evoking that Harley Davidson imagery and pride in our town. And we changed the character of the eagle, so to speak, to make it a little more personified, for lack of a better word, to make it look to have some human characteristics as an eagle. And we modified our color palette a little bit, and now we lean heavily on the blue, the gold, still some red accents here and there. But our arch rivals across the river in Lancaster, their primary color is red, so we try not to do too much red, just some piping, some accenting at times on our logo. And then the other thing that we've really introduced, starting back in 2017. So this last season we just won our fourth Atlantic League championship, but back in 2017 when we won our third, we had a black jersey with sort of an industrial diamond plate looking York on it, and it became very popular during that playoff push and that eventual championship run. And so ever since then, we've also had a black jersey as part of our look.
The Lancaster now, I guess, Stormers,
Stormers, yes.
they have doubled down on the red, right? Like they are super,
Yes.
super
Code
red.
red, every red, red, red. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned that you worked with a firm to develop this brand. Listeners of this podcast are familiar with Brandiose, which was back then called Plan B. Sort of speaks to the longevity of this brand. 2012. That is in minor league baseball. You referenced the fact that it's sort of changing. It's getting increasingly wacky. It's getting
Right.
these characters are getting sillier and sillier.
Right.
That's especially true when you look at like alternate brands and
Right.
these temporary identities that teams will take on for a
Right.
weekend. What is, do you think, the reason for the staying power of this character, right? Like, why is there not the impulse to to change something that's been
Yeah.
around for more than a decade? Why is it still
Yeah.
popular?
Yeah, that's a very good question. No, I didn't have anyone ask me that before. Well, I think a couple things. First of all, I would like to say we got it right. We did put a lot of time and energy working with Brandios into making sure that we liked what they were doing and that we didn't just accept, hey, these guys are the pros, they know what they're doing. I think there is a tendency at times, I've made that mistake myself, where you defer to the experts and then you realize a year or two later you just don't like it. Right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
good
Hmm.
news is we like it. They also gave us sort of a kit of parts type approach where we
Yeah.
definitely have our primary logo, but there are a lot of pieces of that imagery. And I've got a really outstanding in-house. Now he's now our marketing director, but Cody started with us as a full-time creative director, graphic designer, very talented. And so we have been able to take those pieces they gave us and stay fresh and stay new using the same family of those identity marks. And I think that's also helped. So we liked it. We got it right in the first place, and then we've been able to use pieces of it to apply to all kinds of hats and jerseys and merchandise and other things over the years. So it's had a lot of legs, as they say.
So you mentioned working with local artists. That's a
Yeah.
that's a really fantastic approach. I'm curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, we do the same kinds of things that a lot of teams do with your just different jersey auction kind of designs, lots of patriotic jerseys. We do the alternate identity. We've played as the York Pretzels. We have a Hispanic identity, Ritmo de York,
Okay.
the York Rhythm, which pays homage to what is primarily a Dominican community in York and the music of the Dominican community here. But the other thing we've done is worked with some local artists in designing jerseys, and one of them in particular developed a teal and black identity and a treatment of the word York and the treatment of the word revolution based on his sort of graffiti art derived style that has been a huge hit with our customers. I mean, a huge hit. It started off as, hey, we'll do this one time with him. He goes by the artist name Diz, D-I-Z-Z, if you people want to look him up on Instagram or wherever. Dripped God, G-A-W-D. Dripped God, G-A-W-D. You can find him, and you'll see both his work and some of his work for us. And it was such a smash hit right away with all of our fans that we've now taken that in that partnership with him. And we are now also using that as one of our official on-field jerseys, the black and the teal. So maybe one of the other reasons that we've had longevity is with the primary logo set is our willingness to also do some other things, to retire the ones that don't work. And I would also say that so much technology now has allowed you to dabble, right? You no longer have to buy 300 of everything. You can buy 25 of a shirt, and if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell. Even the jersey, the sublimation technology has allowed us to do a lot at a very affordable price to try things. So the in-house design capability, the partnership with Diz, the development of the black and teal, the dripped logo, that has also given us a lot to work with.
That's very cool. That the program that you're talking about is called Brand Ambassadors. Where
Yes.
what's the impetus of that program? That's very cool.
Well, it starts with the fact that we recognize the same thing that Major League Baseball has recognized, which is that our sport has not done a good job appealing to minority communities in the United States. Our Black and Hispanic population here in York County is about 18%, and we weren't seeing enough of those folks at our ballpark. And so we wanted to make sure that we were sending really clear messages that Wellspan Park is for everyone, the York Revolution is for everyone. We've got a great Dominican community in York, and well, hell, where do half the baseball players in the world come from these days? From the DR, but we weren't seeing those fans at our ballpark enough. We were not seeing the black fans at our ballpark enough. So we have partnered up with some folks who are prominent in those communities to be brand ambassadors for us, to associate themselves with our team, to really try to send that message that, hey, we want you here at our ballpark. We want you to be fans of the revolution. And so we've had some success with that. It's really about walking the talk, right? I don't know anybody in minor league baseball who doesn't want more people buying their tickets. So what do you do when you want more people to buy your tickets? You got to find new audiences and you got to convince them to come. And sometimes that's by shooting off fireworks, and sometimes that's by having, Boy Scout sleepovers like all of us do. But if you really want to get out there and appeal to these communities, you got to be able to sort of get in front of them. And sometimes it helps to work with other people to get in front of them.
That's fantastic. What a fascinating program. I mean, I know that's, in minor league baseball, the Copa de la Diversión program
Right.
is very popular. But to see an individual team develop a program like that and
Yeah.
to work with new communities and new fan bases is very cool. So
Trying.
yeah. Eric, this has been so much fun. I really appreciate it. Such so many interesting stories behind this brand. Where can people find the Revolution on social media, online, that sort of thing? And if you have any socials,
Say YorkRevolution.com. Our website is the place to start. All our socials are on there. We'd love to have people join the family virtually, hop on our email list, see what we're doing. Even if you're not in a position to come to our games, we more than welcome folks to become part of the Revs family.
awesome. Eric, thank you so much. This has been great. And I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule this morning to chat with me.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am so pleased to have on the podcast my good friend Phil Broder, who is also, this may be a surprise to some listeners out there, Baseball by Design's minor league hockey correspondent. Phil, hello, how are you doing?
I believe the way I have to say it is I'm fantastic, right?
If you're trying to be Dan Simon is always fantastic. I didn't say good morning because it is not morning time. It's evening in Pennsylvania where we find you right now wearing hockey stuff. First of all, let's talk about why do we need a minor league hockey correspondent for Baseball by Design?
Well, I've been encouraging you for a while now to, at least do one episode about minor league hockey logos because there are some fantastic teams and logos out there, and just some amazing uniforms with lederhosen and overalls and all kinds of fun stuff that I feel that you're just neglecting.
Well, you'll be the first guest on that episode when we get into minor league hockey. Do you have a favorite like nearby? Like we're going to talk to you about York, Pennsylvania. We're going to get into, minor league baseball in central Pennsylvania, the York Revolution. Before we get into that though, like what's a nearby central Pennsylvania minor league hockey team that I should cover?
Well, this is the home of the Hershey Bears.
Yeah.
And they are the two-time defending Calder Cup champions right now, and they're headed back to the playoffs to try for the three-peat this year.
Hershey, Pennsylvania, by the way, is the home of Hershey Park. Obviously, it's where Hershey chocolate comes from. The site of my first ever roller coaster, the Comet. And then when I got old enough, the Super Duper Looper. I assume they're a pile of dust now because of termites.
I want to know. In fact, I just heard on another podcast somebody mentioning that they had this was last summer, but they had come to Hershey specifically to ride the Super Duper Looper.
Oh,
So it is still there and still active as far as I know.
still there. Would be a great alternate identity for a team in Pennsylvania, the Super Duper Loopers.
If only there were a baseball team in Hershey.
We need a baseball team in Hershey. They're all over Pennsylvania, though,
They're
as we.
surrounding Hershey. Yeah. I should point out that I got engaged to my now wife with the help of the Hershey Bears, and then you stood up at our wedding as one of my groomsmen.
I was there at your wedding. I like to actually claim that I'm responsible for you meeting your wife because you
Yes,
took over the
you
management
did.
of back then bloggers to be named later. Don't look that up because I think it's Japanese porn now. But
Yeah,
bloggers to be named later was the name of the website, and you were manning our Twitter account, and you got into it with your now wife over hockey rivalry, your Red Wings versus her Penguins.
yeah. I noticed that there was this girl. Anytime that I posted something about hockey, I was getting responses from this girl, and from that cute little picture, the quarter-inch size picture on Twitter. I thought, oh, she looks kind of cute, and we started talking. She actually thought I was you,
Oh no.
and then found out that I wasn't, and we still kept talking, and now we've been married for 7 years.
You are a probably the most, perhaps anyway, the most faithful Baseball by Design listener there is. You will text me something about each week's episode, usually within 24 hours after it downloads. But you very famously, and maybe I'll have to share this on social media, you put together early on in the history of Baseball by Design, you put together a Baseball by Design bingo card that had some of the things that happen pretty regularly on this podcast, such as I'm wearing the shirt of the team I'm interviewing. I've kept you too long.
Yeah, I remember doing that. Yeah, I think I'm also sort of your unofficial show fact checker.
Yes,
Um,
you and fifth
as I
grade Will.
as I about once a month find some egregious mistake that you've made and call you on it.
You get super mad too. You're like, I'm next time I see you, I'm going to punch you in the face because you said Canadian goose instead of Canada goose or something like
Well,
that. I would never,
the,
but
the one that still upsets me, because you coming from the Philadelphia area and spending so much time in South Jersey,
oh boy.
were not aware of the Delaware Bay shellfish industry. You didn't
Uh,
seem to know anything about the oyster trade in the Delaware Bay, and I feel like you lost your South Jersey credibility.
Well, I like to say that I am a lifelong learner, and so I think that that's just it was a learning opportunity for me. Speaking of learning, let's learn a little bit about York, Pennsylvania. As I said, you're just down the road. This team has a brand that is largely based on industry. So, talk to us about industry in York, Pennsylvania. What are the industries they have there?
I know that most people will probably think of Harley Davidson as being from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, that's where Harley is headquartered. But all the actual motorcycles are built in York, Pennsylvania. That is where Harley's vehicle operations plant is. I used to be a tour guide there.
All right. All right. That's a surprising fact about Harley Davidson. If you're a tour guide there, do people challenge you on that? Like, are they like, nah, come on, Harley Davidson's Milwaukee. What are you talking about?
The engines are built in Milwaukee. Harley's engine factory is still in Milwaukee.
Okay.
But they ship the engines to Pennsylvania, and that is where the bikes are assembled.
Okay.
It all wound up in York because AMC was here. It started as a military factory during World War II, making anti-aircraft guns. And then AMC bought that out and was making golf carts and other recreational equipment. If you've ever had a, sunfish sailboat, that was an AMC product. And at some point, AMC in the 70s bought Harley Davidson and shifted manufacturing out of Milwaukee and brought it to York. And then when Harley bought themselves back from AMC, they kept the manufacturing in Pennsylvania.
Obviously, York has a sort of an extensive history. We were talking before we started the actual recording here. What are some other things that are manufactured in York, Pennsylvania?
Well, let me go back to the American Revolution and,
Oh yeah.
kind of skip right past the manufacturing question.
Okay, do that.
York will steadfastly maintain that it was America's first capital
Oh yeah.
because this was where the Continental Congress was based in 1777 and part of 78. And that's where they signed the Articles of Confederation, which was the first American government document to use the term United States of America.
Hmm.
So York says it was the capital since that was when the USA became official.
Is there like an inferiority complex here? Like York, it's like, no, we're Harley Davidson, not Milwaukee. And it's like, we're the first capital, not Philadelphia.
I don't know about inferiority complex. I just think that the York feels they don't get enough credit for stuff. And come on, you've all had a York peppermint patty. York, Pennsylvania. Come on.
I was hoping you'd get to York peppermint patties here because, yeah, that's where that's York, Pennsylvania is where the York peppermint patty comes from. With Hershey just down the road, I mean, we've got the like cheap Halloween chocolate just absolutely cornered in Pennsylvania.
And York peppermint patty is now part of Hershey. So yeah, it's all chocolate.
What are you guys giving away at you and your still wife? What are you giving away on Halloween?
We live on a very busy road and we don't get any trick or treaters. So
Oh.
We don't have to worry about that.
So the American Revolution, York is the first capital. That's a great trivia question. Like if you Google first capital of the United States, what's going to come up?
Probably Philadelphia, because there's a bunch of cities that can all lay some claim. I think Baltimore's got a claim. Lancaster, Pennsylvania says that they were the capital for one day. Everybody's got a claim to it.
Yeah. Actually, New York is what Google says, or at least that's what AI says. But here you go. It's on the City of York's website that the City of York is the first capital of the United States.
And if it's on their own website, it must be true.
That's right. They are a reliable and definitive source for certain. The brand, first of all, the first brand that they had that was more sort of patriotic feeling, it was basically the Philadelphia Eagle. At least the head of the Philadelphia Eagle. And then the new one that they're still using that came out in 2012 is very, very different looking.
Let's go back a little bit before we got to the current Eagle mascot.
Yeah.
Before Dan Simon asks you about this, let's talk about the York White Roses.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, how great would it be if we preempted Dan's studio Simon Stumper?
I'm trying to help you out here. Yeah. So yeah, York's minor league baseball team, which was a for some portion of that was a Pittsburgh Pirates affiliate, from 1884 to 1969, they were the York White Roses, and their main rival across the river, the Lancaster Red Roses, and that goes back to England. Obviously, York and Lancaster are named after the cities in England, But those were the two cities and the two political factions involved in the War of the Roses, which tore England apart for 3 decades.
What a beautiful thing to
So,
name a baseball team after.
yeah, so there's still a rivalry between York and Lancaster. They just shifted it from England to Pennsylvania.
I do appreciate, as a Pennsylvanian, how you are pronouncing Lancaster correctly.
Lancaster. Oh, I've learned, believe me. I've also learned it's Gettysburg, not Gettysburg.
Oh, I would have gotten that one wrong. Gettysburg.
Yep.
You have been to York Revolution games. What is the game experience for you as a fan of the sport for at an independent minor league baseball game?
Well, going into Wellspan Park, you start by walking through Brooks Robinson Plaza because Brooks Robinson, before he became the Hall of Fame third baseman with the Baltimore Orioles, got his start as a York White Rose. So he is associated, beginning of his career was in York, and they're very proud of that. So you got to go past the Brooks Robinson statue to get into the stadium.
That's pretty cool. Honoring the second best third baseman in Major League Baseball history.
I know where you're going with this, and who am I to say anything bad about Mike Schmidt?
All right, so you go past the Brooks Robinson statue.
So the stadium kind of got shoehorned into a space that might have been too small for most baseball parks.
Yeah.
Once you're in there, you realize like left field is really short. Distance down the left field line is 300 feet.
Wow.
So they've built a wall. And if you're familiar with Fenway Park, you know how that looks.
Yes.
In fact, the wall in York is 6 inches higher than the Green Monster.
Wow.
So it's an interesting little park to play in. And part of the reason you got that short left field is there's a railroad right behind the stadium. So it's entirely normal that you have, freight trains rumbling past in mid-game.
I kind of love that. I love the idea too of like a home run ball hitting a train. Bet you that would be great.
I suppose it's possible, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think you may have even procured for the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame a helmet for me from the York Revolution. Am I remembering that right?
I believe I did. Yeah, because you got one from York because I've yet to get a Harrisburg Senators one for you because the Harrisburg Senators only have Washington Nationals helmets.
Sometimes. Yeah, they're a little hit or miss. We talked about your wedding, and your name is Phil, as we have established on this interview already. And you got all of the folks who were members of your groomel party there fighting Phil's hats. And I feel bad. It's on the wall behind me here. I should be wearing it for this interview. It's silly of me not to be.
I hadn't even thought of it. Mine's out in the garage.
We were the fighting Phils at your wedding.
I had my whole team there.
It's the only minor league baseball groomsman's gift I've ever gotten. So this is a podcast about design, visual communications, and baseball, of course. But you are a designer of another sort, and I wanted to bring this question in. You design kites, and you've been to 13 foreign countries to participate in kiting events, competitions, crafting kites in different places. The art of crafting a design for a kite, how similar is that, do you think, to this world of logo design?
I'd never thought about it, but now I can see some similarities because when we talk about kites, we're talking about it's got to look good from 100 feet away. Doesn't matter what it looks like up close. You can pick some beautiful artwork, but how does it look 100 feet away? And a lot of baseball logos are like that. You can have a really detailed logo that's impossible to embroider into, a 3-inch space on a cap. So in that regard, yeah, you're trying to make a design that looks good from a distance.
What are some examples of some kite creations, some designs that you've crafted on your kites?
Oh, the kite that I'm probably best known for is a Perry the Platypus. I recently won the top prize at the Cherry Blossom Kite Festival in Washington, D.C. with essentially I took their festival poster from last year and sewed it onto a 9-foot kite. But the kite that got maybe more attention at that event was a kite that I've made that shows two well-known world leaders in a passionate embrace and says love is love at the bottom.
That is very funny. All right. Well, Phil, this has been fun to catch up on the podcast. And now what you can do is you can listen to this episode with you in it, and you can text me something really angry about something wrong that you said. That's what I really want. Want you to be like, I'm really ticked off at your guest, Phil Broder.
Yeah, I can self-correct. Yeah.
Hey, I know that you're not big on social media, but what about your kite stuff? Can people go find your kiting adventures somewhere online?
I'm on Facebook as Phil Drachenmacher, Drachenmacher, Drachenmacher.
Which is
So
kite
that,
maker, right?
which is kite maker in German. So yeah, if you're looking for my kites, that's a decent place to start.
We will put that in the show notes. Phil, thank you very much for bringing your York, Pennsylvania knowledge. We'll see you again soon on another episode.
I'm off to enjoy a peppermint patty.
And go ride the Super Duper Looper.
Can do.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time once again for Studio Simon Stumpers with Dan Simon, designer extraordinaire, live from Louisville, Kentucky, home of Studio Simon. Dan, good morning. Hello, how are you?
I am fantastic. Good morning to you, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing very well. We're talking about a team in my native Pennsylvania, a state that I hope to get back to sometime.
Well, being that you are a native of Pennsylvania, maybe this will be an easy question for you.
Oh, I always hate when you expect me to get it.
Well, it's specific about Pennsylvania and specific to York, Pennsylvania.
Mm.
How far was Wayne, Pennsylvania, where you grew up, from York?
90 minutes to 2 hours-ish.
Okay. Well,
Wasn't a place that we went regularly.
let's see what you do or do not know about York, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Which of these popular edibles did not originate in York, Pennsylvania? Two did, one didn't.
Two truths and a lie. Here we go.
Was it A, York peppermint patties, B, Barnum's animal crackers, or C, Peeps?
Barnum's Animal Crackers. Final answer.
So you're assuming, since York peppermint patties are called York peppermint patties, that they originated in York?
Yeah, well, and we've talked a little bit about this on this episode, and the reason I went peppermint patties and Peeps in York, Pennsylvania, is because they're sort of sweet based, and I associate York with candy, so I'm going with the animal crackers. We did not talk specifically about animal crackers on this episode, but I just am associating York with candy.
Well, York peppermint patties did indeed originate in York. In 1940, they were made by the York Cone Company. They made ice cream cones and wanted to diversify. And so they started making what today is still known as York peppermint patties. Today, however, they're owned by Hershey and made in Mexico.
Nearby Hershey.
Peeps, which are the little marshmallow chicks that are associated, I guess, with Easter.
Mm-hmm. And Easter, at the time of this recording, was not that long ago.
Were made in Pennsylvania, but not in York, or originated in Pennsylvania, but not in York. They were made by the Rada Candy Company in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in the 1940s. They're now made elsewhere.
It's Lancaster, Pennsylvania,
okay.
Dan.
Right.
It's Lancaster, New York, Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
My son Casey chides me for putting the emphasis on the wrong syllables. Like when I say Broadway, and he says, no, it's Broadway.
I disagree with that.
I say spring break, and he says, no, it's spring break. So I'll get Lancaster correct now.
Casey, who is notably not 3 anymore, and who lives on his own in Washington, D.C. Lancaster, California, Lancaster, New York, Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Okay. So I'll take your word for it. So Barnum's Animal Crackers did originate in York, Pennsylvania. They were originally made by the Stauffer's Biscuit Company.
Huh?
They were the first animal cracker biscuits in the United States going back to 1871. And today they're known as Barnum's Animal Crackers, produced in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, not far from where I grew up in Wayne, New Jersey, by Nabisco. I never thought about this until I learned this during the research I was doing for this. Do you know that Nabisco is a syllabic abbreviation of National Biscuit Company?
I did not know that. I like that very much. And syllabic abbreviation is a great term. I'm going to use that from now on when I talk about the Delmarva shorebirds.
Yeah, yeah, it's unlike what's that other thing? Onomatopoeia,
Onomatopoeia, sure.
which is what is that again?
That's when a word sounds like the thing that it is describing.
Right.
So, like, I think of it as Batman sounds, like pow, whap. Like any word that's going to be in a starburst in a Batman cartoon is onomatopoeic.
Look, I want to share with the listeners and you, who's listening to me, so I guess that does make you kind of a listener, a couple of more interesting facts about animal crackers since they
Okay,
were
there
made
we
in
go.
York, Pennsylvania. One of the things that the Stouffer's Biscuit Company originated, in addition to making animal crackers in the United States, was putting them in a box, which they're still in. And that box, I think it still has the string or the rope on top. Do you know what I'm talking
I do,
about?
yes. It's iconic.
Do you know what the reason for that was?
Was it meant to look like a lunchbox?
You would think, something that little kids could carry around.
Yeah.
But according to my research, it was so that people would hang them as an ornament on Christmas trees.
Wow. I'm going to
And
start doing that.
okay, and here's one other, in my mind, fascinating animal cracker fact. So I mentioned that Stouffer's put them in boxes, and you might think, well, didn't they always come in boxes? No, they did not.
Ooh.
They came, they would be en masse in a barrel, and you would like at a general store or something, you'd like scoop them out, probably into a bag or something like that, or the proprietor would scoop them out. And that's where the term Cracker Barrel comes from.
No kidding. That's amazing.
See what you learned through minor league baseball?
It's incredible. Cracker Barrel. And who knew that someday the word Cracker Barrel would come to mean oversized outdoor checkerboard table?
And white rocking chairs.
Exactly. Oversized wooden white rocking chairs while you wait 40 minutes for a table for gray food. I don't think Cracker Barrel is going to be sponsoring my podcast.
Hey, here's a little thing. Speaking of Cracker Barrel, I have a very good friend who is a outstanding illustrator named Paul Rogers. And Paul Rogers became friends with the jazz trumpeter, Wynton Marsalis. Do I have that right?
Mhm.
He plays a trumpet, right?
Yeah.
Paul is a big jazz fan and wrote a book called the Jazz ABZ book, which was famous jazz musicians A through Z. And it's a beautifully illustrated book. I have an autographed copy of it here. And he later went, if you like jazz and you love great illustration, look up Paul Rogers. It's probably still available like on Amazon or something. Paul Rogers illustrated Jazz ABZ, I believe is. Anyway, he later went on tour with Wynton Marsalis and his band as they were touring the country on one of their jazz tours, which kicked off in Louisville, Kentucky. So I had dinner with Paul because he was traveling with the band for the tour doing illustrations. And one of the things he learned about Wynton Marsalis is wherever they went, Wynton Marsalis, they had to find a Cracker Barrel to have breakfast at. So like every city they went to, if it had a Cracker Barrel, that's where they had breakfast because Wynton Marsalis loved breakfast at Cracker Barrel.
That is hilarious. We have a Cracker Barrel out on I-25 that I don't believe I have ever been to. It's maybe like 25, 30 minutes away, and I've never been there. So I guess I don't have the same affinity for a Cracker Barrel that Wynton Marsalis did. However, Wynton Marsalis and I, both trumpet players. Maybe he was maybe to slightly more acclaim.
Maybe slightly. But see, another thing we just learned on the Baseball by Design podcast.
I played a trumpet in all through middle school and high school, and then I played in the University of Richmond pep band. It was one of my most favorite things about being in college was playing in the pep band.
To this day, could you play the Edwin Diaz walkout song, the tinny
Flawlessly.
trumpet?
It would be perfect. It would be perfect.
Maybe someday on the Baseball by Design podcast.
I'd have to build my lips back up to get to some of those high notes. I'm not sure I was ever able to play that song. So,
Well, maybe you and Ranger Amy can work on that together.
that was always my argument when I was looking for dates in high school was that trumpet players had strong lips. So, Dan, you never know where we're going to end up on these Studio Simon stumpers. I understand that this is not a single stumper today, that we have yet another double stumper, Studio Simon double stumper. Is there a nightcap?
There is. So let's do the nightcap. York, Pennsylvania has had minor league baseball actually since the late 1800s, off and on, but as often as not, they have had minor league baseball. So our Studio Simon stumper today asks, for 40 seasons, on and off from 1909 to 1967, York, Pennsylvania minor league baseball teams played by what name? Was it A, the York Capitals, B, the York White Roses, or C, the York Dukes?
Well, I know this from this very episode. It was the White Roses.
Oh, okay, good. So maybe then what I'm about to say will be redundant if this was brought up. York was named after York, England, and it was nicknamed the White Rose City after the symbol of the House of York. Did that come up?
We talked, yes, we did. We talked about that, but that encapsulation will be a great review for to wrap up this podcast.
Okay, but also now the other two names I put in there, the York Dukes, I came up with that because Duke of York. Okay, I thought maybe if you didn't already know the answer, you might think, well, that would make sense.
It was a red herring.
What also makes sense is the York Capitals. Do you know why I included that as a potential answer?
We talked about this as well. York's claim to being the first capital of the United States.
Right, for 9 months from late 1777 to mid 1778. It's also the site of the First Continental Congress and the birthplace of the Articles of Confederation.
I'm very grateful to my friend Phil Broder for bringing a bunch of York trivia to the previous segment here, because that helped me out quite a bit on this Studio Simon nightcap.
Okay, well, there you go. So you were 1 for 2. You're batting 500 today.
I'll take it. If I can split a doubleheader, I'll take it. Dan, as always, this was a ton of fun, and appreciate you bringing your Studio Simon stumpers to us every single week. And guess what? We'll see you next week.
See you then.